First off, Olivia, how do I pronounce the full name?
Serafini-Sauli.
Okay, I'm here with Olivia Serafini-Sauli, the filmmaker behind Endless Calls for Fame, the story of the new rising suns. Pleasure to meet you.
Hi, thanks for having me, Greg.
So, yeah, no worries. I have to just right out of the gate just jump out listening to their music. Really good, solid, enjoyed it. Listen to it on Spotify. We'll listen to it more after watching the documentary. Do you feel personally, I mean, with Napster aside and whatnot, and the changing music industry, if they got along, do you think it would have been a different story? Because you're friends with them, you were really ensconced in that music. What was your as a fan, not just as a friend, what where was their trajectory if they were able to stay together?
Greg, that's such a great, amazing question, actually, because I think from sort of if you look at what happened to them chronologically, the timing was that they were actually literally the bridge from that kind of post-grunge Nirvana era of music into what ultimately became the Strokes, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, Interpol, and that kind of early aughts Williamsburg scene that really exploded. They literally lived right in the middle, and they were almost. I think they could have been the beginning of that Strokes next phase. In fact, there's a crazy story that Kevin, the guitar player, told me that there was a point where they were in the same rehearsal studio as the Strokes. The Strokes were in the door next to them. Like the New Rising Suns were in one room and they were in the other room. And there is a I do think there's an argument that they could have been the beginning of what and ultimately they missed, if that makes sense. Because sonically, that's kind of where they were going. I mean, they could have, and it would have been really interesting to see how they would have developed musically. Um, and unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to experience that. But I think they had a very specific sound that was bridging sort of this scene that was kind of people were done with and something that was a little bit newer.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening just on a cursory listen. Their sound is still doesn't sound dated. It sounds very crisp, clean, and alive. You know better than me what attracted you to their music as well, not just as a filmmaker or a friend, but just as a listener.
Yeah, so that's such a great question. So we're coming out of all this indie rock that we were living in, like and as I said, there was like that sort of 90s, there was like a 90s sound, there was a very kind of typical 90s sound that was kind of happening in the mainstream rock world. And I think that everybody was getting a little bored with it. And there was this wave coming from the UK with Britpop that was really interesting. And we talk about it in the film because the sound there it was very different because they had this kind of um, lightness to their music and a kind of humor to it. And they had this kind of big rock and roll feel, but it was a bit cheekier. And I think what was interesting about what the music New Rising Suns were doing is they were kind of marrying some of the more traditional like 70s rock, like the Stones and everything, with this kind of big, like sort of Brit-pop sound. It kind of and they sort of married the two and it was very different for me. It felt like it was just a fresher direction. And I was a massive Britpop fan. Like that was just oh my God. Like I was like way early in all these bands. I was a huge Blur, Oasis, Charlatan, Supergrass, all those bands. That was like like, that was my world. And so these guys were Americans. They were New York kids being influenced by that and then creating but then being born in America and having grown up with like the Stones and the Beatles and then kind of marrying those two elements and creating their own thing, which is what I thought was really interesting about it.
So what's interesting is what's the key to actually you have just how much archive material did you have, and what was the key to actually just filtering out and editing and making this documentary? And it feels like the work that's put in was over just number of years. Can you tell our listeners just the number of years in the archive and sifting through that and the challenge thereof? Because after watching this, I wouldn't have mind an alternate documentary where it's just a huge archive dump because I was so interested into these three guys. But I mean, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Hey, that's a great idea. We could do it for like the DVD. Like I could do like an extended archive. um, So yeah, so the archival was crazy. I mean, basically what happened was is that a lot of the material was my footage that I shot from back in the day. I just always had a camera with me. It was really small and portable, and I was just kind of in my world, and I had all that archival. And then Carl Glanville, who's in the movie, was the engineer, and he discovered in his like literally his New Jersey storage all the material, the archive from the actual recordings, which he had thought, we all had thought it had been lost. And he found hours and hours of this footage of them actually in the studio. I had gone to Bearsville to the studio, but I was not allowed in, or I didn't have access to the actual sitting sessions where you see them making the album. So that was a gift as a filmmaker. I was like, oh my God, yay, it's like your archival dream. And so I started gathering all this stuff. I mean, this was a really long journey. It was like 5 years of making the film. A lot of times not thinking I would even be able to finish it. You know, it's like a documentary is so exhaustive, and, you know, it takes so much time. And I just kind of never gave up, even though the pandemic shut us down for a long time and all these things happened. And I just kind of stuck to it. And, you know, I ended up working with an absolutely amazing editor, Gabby Torres, who came on once we had everything together to help kind of sift through and really shape the story. And it was really fun to have all this amazing footage of an era that is so lost. And I'm just really happy to be able to share it. And we also have like archival photographs that had never been seen from the CBGB days. Like there's all this photographs from CBGB that no one's ever seen before. So it was really, I felt it was a real treat. It was really fun.
Also, I mean, look, as much as I enjoyed the documentary, the annoying journalist in me would have I would have liked to do the handheld camera and just grill Garrett and grill, regarding his relationship with Kevin and vice versa. And it could have been sort of like a current affair tabloidy thing. That's not your documentary. But I was just wondering the creative choice. I know you're friends and colleagues with them, but also I think it really works because you can actually, as a viewer, read between the lines and their how Garrett is feeling. Can you just talk about that balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great question, Greg, because there's a lot of emotion in telling that story for them. And again, as I said, like they were super generous with telling that. I just let the camera roll. You know what I mean? I'm like, and they just were so incredibly generous with their stories. There was a lot they wanted to say, and it was really amazing. And I just let them say that and let them kind of tell me everything they felt comfortable telling me. And I like the fact that it is sort of brutally honest, but it wasn't. Their story isn't like that kind of rock and roll cliche of like, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and then everybody gets into drugs, and we all fall apart. We end up in rehab, and somebody dies, and like it was. That's not the story at all. It was much more nuanced. It was much more complex, and I wanted to try to give the audience as much of a sense of that, but also not being like, this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, it's this person's fault, because none of it was, it's not the label's fault, it's not it's not the MP3's fault, it's not the dynamics fault. It's an absolutely perfect storm of elements that come together. And I wanted to really I was very conscious of that. I wanted to make sure that as a filmmaker, I was talking about really the mosaic of the pieces of the puzzle that led to what happened to them. You know what I mean? I was very aware of that.
I think, and it is not a cliche story. And I think what's interesting about it is all of these guys, Kevin, Drew, Garrett, they even post the band, they continued a career in music, knowing that it's not going to pay the bills, it's not going to get them a mansion or the great mortgage and whatnot. And I wonder, as you as a filmmaker and also as a journalist in a way, I wonder how they feel about being such talented artists and knowing, I think one of them alludes to it, that was the closest that at the time that they could get to that kind of success, especially when you're in it for the right reasons, like you were alluding to. I mean, did you ever think about that as far as just they're so passionate and
Yep.
they really deserve that kind of success because they were in it for the right reasons. So
Yeah, such a great point. I mean, it is true. And you have to realize like at the time, and we were really young. And when they got this deal, like I remember, like it was huge. I mean, that was like money that none of us ever even dreamed we could ever have. Like it was incredible. It was a lot. And what I think it's a testament to them and to so many other artists, you just can't give up. You're not going to stop. It's what you do. You're always going to do it. You have to do other things. You have to pay rent. You have to like, you know, but you don't stop doing it. If you're like, they're musicians to their core, they always will be. Whatever they end up doing on the side or extra, whatever it is, like that's who they are. And they're never going to stop. And most artists will say that. Like you have to keep going. I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard now. And you see that in the film. Like it's very hard to be in New York and be a creative person, but you just have to you gotta just keep going. I mean, I have to say, like, even when we were chatting with like some really young teenagers, like seeing the movie, who were asking the guys questions like, "Hey, I want to start a band. I'm a guitar player. What do you recommend?" They're like, "Just don't give up. Just do it. Just do it." And you just got to know that it's hard. There's not a system you can join, which is said in the movie. There's not a structure. You just have to make your own stuff. And that's what you're seeing more and more today, is that people are going back to that very DIY sense of like, I'm making my own things. I'm going to put them on Spotify. I'm making a craft thing on Etsy. I don't care. I'm making my own stuff. And they have more, in a weird way, more outlets to get it out there. But yeah, I think it's very universal, that sentiment, of how do you keep going when you keep getting beaten down. It's really hard. It's really hard.
Now, we were talking about music. What about filmmaking? 5 years to get this documentary done. I'm sure filmmaking came into your life or directing came into your life maybe at an early age. I'm
Yeah,
wondering where and how do you keep going? You were talking about New York. What's the key to that for you?
yeah, that's so true. So I think so I started, I mean, I've had so many weird like careers and jobs and everything, but I kind of came through the like indie film heyday. I would say, like, I was part of that whole world, and I've watched how the film industry has changed radically for all of my peers in terms of the kind of work that's available, the kind of work people are getting, things that have shut down completely, revenue streams that there used to be, but now it's, everybody started for a while doing commercials, and then that's kind of changed, and now people are going back to more corporate stuff, and then there's docs or whatever it is. There's a whole range of things, and so everybody's kind of finding their way. I think things happen for a reason, timing wise. I don't think. Um, I really don't even know the answer, but like I just think like if I can find a way to keep working on projects that are amazing, as inspiring, you can do any kind of work as long as you're always having something that is you're like that's keeping your creative juices flowing, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of the key. And it just takes time. You can't, you have to take things, you can just kind of do it slowly, but you can get there. You know what I mean? And now you just got to keep plugging forward and hopefully get to make more films, and I'm hoping that like there seems to be like an indie film boom now. Everybody's like back to indies again. So I'm like, people like me and other filmmaker friends of mine who are making independent things, I think hopefully we will have a voice, we'll be able to be seen, our work will be able to be seen, which I think it is happening. So I'm optimistic.
On your work being able to be seen March 14th on digital and on demand. I know it's along the journey. It's not an end date for you as a filmmaker, but what are your emotions leading up to March 14th? With all the hard work you put into
I
this.
know. It's crazy, Greg. I'm like, what happened? Like, it seems so surreal. It seems so surreal. I still can't believe it. It's so exciting. Um, when I finished the film, we actually had so many iterations of the film. Like, we had it, we cut it, we showed it, then we recut it. So, like, it's almost like a totally new version. The version that everyone's going to see on Friday is actually, I mean, I only literally finished it in December. Like, so it's really like done and ready to be seen. And from day one, when I started this film, my hope was just that it would be seen. I just wanted people to see it. Like I had no grand aspirations. I was like, if I have to like put it out and I don't know, somewhere, I just want the world to be able to see it. And the fact that we have this opportunity, that we were working with Gravitas to get it out there, is just like a dream come true. And it's going to be available on Apple TV, on Amazon, on Spectrum and Fios and all these places. People can Google it, they can find it. I'm so excited.
So I gotta ask, what did a couple of questions, couple two-part question. The New Rising Suns, what did they each member think of your documentary? And what is the push and pull of when they give you a call, Olivia, this is so and so. this clip, I look kind of not like my best self. Can you accidentally clip it on, on Final Cut or DaVinci or something like that? What's the balance for you? Do you say, well, no, it's my film, you're my buddy, but I got so can you just tell our listeners about that and give insight on that kind of relationship?
Such a great question, Greg. I mean, I will say baseline, they have been amazing because they're like, you got to do what you got to do. Like, you do you. They were amazing. They're like, you got to do your thing, make it. If maybe there was one thing or two, they would say, I said that thing and I'm not, maybe don't use that. There would be maybe the occasional thing where they just were like, maybe I shouldn't, that happened maybe a little, but like generally speaking, they were just like, use that, go for it. Like there were very few moments like that. I felt so blessed that they trusted me to just take it and to make the best film that I could make to represent them. So that was very lucky. That was very lucky.
So, last question is, people when they watch the documentary, there's going to be optimistic people like me saying, "What's that cliche line? Oh, you mean I still got a chance?" So then you write. So, what kind of answer do you give people who ask you that question? Do they have maybe a glimmer in the future? That little 1%, is it, or do you think it's completely, the music's there, what they've already created, and do you think that's all in the past? Now, what is your honest take on that?
I have no idea.
Oh, that's a good answer.
I think right now they're kind of, emotionally living what happened, and they're all doing separate things too. They all already have other bands and other projects. So this is a very weird kind of nugget. It was like a tiny little moment in between other big chapters of their lives. I think they're just happy that people know about their music and that it'll get out there more because of the film. And anything beyond that, I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine, Greg.
Very, very good. Thank you for your time. And very quick question. I also do a movie podcast, and I
Yeah.
ask filmmakers and actors to give me maybe a recommendation for one of their all-time favorite films, or maybe for you, maybe a documentary or project that really continues to keep you inspired, and what makes this project, documentary, or narrative, a film, speak to you.
Um, Actually, it's something if I'm thinking about something I saw really recently, so I'm not even sure when it's out, but I saw the Pavements documentary, which is a documentary about the band Pavement. I saw it at the New York Film Festival, and I absolutely adored it. I think it is fantastic, and I just on so many levels, people should definitely see it. I just found it really inspiring. I think it pushes the medium. I think it's a story of a great group of artists. You don't even have to like Pavement's music, but you'll love the movie. And I don't know when it's coming out. I probably should look it up, but I think it's going to be available soon. But it was at New York Film Festival in the fall, so I don't know. That's one I would definitely recommend to people to see.
Thank you so much, Olivia. And I know you've been working really hard past 5 years and on, but I see all that vinyl. Maybe the next year you're just gonna hang out and listen to music, or do you have another project that you're cooking in the works, or do you need to take that siesta for months on end?
I actually have other things they're going to be coming out soon, but can't talk about details yet. But there's a lot of stuff in the hit can, which is exciting. The vinyl, maybe I'm going to go back to DJing, Greg. I was a DJ for 10 years. Maybe it's time for me to go back to that. I don't know.
You can
Maybe.
do, can't you do both? You can do both, right? You might do,
I
okay.
can't stay up that late anymore, right?
Yeah, yeah. Or I'm so old, it's hard for me to even get up this early. I know I'm on West Coast, but love the documentary. So no worries on
Thank
that.
you
So
so much. Thank
pleasure.
you so much. It was so great talking to you.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. For more movie and television reviews and interviews, please subscribe to my Deepest Dream channel. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And as always, thanks so much for your support. Take care.